The emergency klaxons wailed across the Grand Council chamber like dying space whales, their mournful cry echoing off crystalline walls as Ambassador Glixnorp slithered frantically across the polished floor. His slug-like body left a glistening trail of panic slime in his wake, while his eye stalks twisted in distress. Above him, the massive holographic seal of the Galactic Federation flickered ominously. Order! Order! Council leader Zephyrian's insectoid mandibles clicked rapidly as his 6 eye stalks swiveled to track the chaos erupting throughout the chamber. The crystalline Vexery delegates chimed in discordant harmony, their translucent bodies pulsing with agitated colors, while the gaseous Nephrites literally deflated in their containment suits, creating an unfortunate squeaking sound. Ambassador Kretch, representing the avian Korthak Empire, molted stress feathers had drifted to the air like snow. Each time he opened his beak to speak, more feathers escaped, creating a growing pile around his perch. What catastrophe could possibly warrant this undignified display? He squawked, immediately molting 3 more primary feathers. Glixnorp finally reached the central podium, hauling his considerable bulk onto the speaking platform with wet, suctioning sounds. "Esteemed colleagues," he wheezed, his translator crackling with static, "I bring dire news from the diplomatic quarter. The humans, they're leaving." The chamber erupted. The Vexery's chiming reached a fever pitch that made everyone's auditory receptors ache. The Nephrites deflated so rapidly their emergency backup oxygen kicked in with loud hisses. Ambassador Kretch molted so violently he resembled a small blizzard. "Leaving?" Zephyrian's eye stalks focused on Glixnorp with laser intensity. Elaborate immediately. "They've formally withdrawn from the Galactic Council," Glixnorp announced, producing a sheet of actual paper from his diplomatic pouch. The primitive material caused a collective gasp. "This was delivered to my office exactly 47 minutes ago." The ancient Torellian delegate, Ambassador Vex, leaned forward on his walking tentacles. Surely this is some form of jest. What damage could one primitive species cause by departing? The document cites irreconcilable differences in problem-solving methodologies, Glixnorp read, squinting at the archaic text. All human colonies, trade routes, and diplomatic missions are being evacuated. Complete withdrawal in 72 standard hours. Ambassador Florbex of the Cephalopod Coalition waved several tentacles dismissively. Ridiculous. Those bipedal mammals with their strange hair growths have contributed nothing of significance. We managed perfectly well before they arrived 50 years ago. Exactly, agreed the synthetic representative unit. 7743, its optical sensors flashing smugly. Those water-obsessed carbon units have been nothing but a bureaucratic curiosity. Their departure will barely register in our systems. Zephyrian's mandibles clicked approvingly. The Federation has weathered far greater challenges. We are the oldest, most sophisticated alliance in galactic history. Surely we can manage without the participation of a single technologically inferior species. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Vexery chimed a harmonious melody of confidence, while the Nephrites reinflated themselves with pompous dignity. But what if... Glixnor began nervously. No, but... Zephyrian cut him off with sharp click. Emergency session concluded. Department heads will file standard reports on any minor adjustments needed. We reconvene in 1 standard week to formally process their departure documentation. As the delegates filed out, chattering about dinner plans and upcoming social events, none noticed a small maintenance panel near the chamber entrance flickering from green to amber, the first warning light in what will become a cascade of failures. 6 hours after the human announcement, Ambassador Florbex burst into the Emergency Operations Center, his tentacles flailing wildly. "The Galactic Stock Exchange just crashed," he shrieked, his chromatophores flashing panic colors across his bulbous head. Operations Chief Vex looked up from his monitoring station. 3 of his eye stalks focused on the scrolling data. Impossible. Our systems are quantum encrypted and triple redundant. The trading algorithms stopped working. Florbex's tentacles pointed at the massive holographic display, showing red warning symbols cascading across every major trade route. Everything's frozen. The Andromedans are trying to use abacuses. Across the center, the communication array's supervisor, a crystalline Vexery named Resonance of Truth, chimed urgently. We're experiencing system irregularities in the translation protocols. Minor glitches, nothing more. Vex's remaining eye stalks swiveled to the communication banks, where several technicians frantically pressed buttons. Define minor glitches. Well, resonance of Truth's harmonic voice wavered. Ambassador Kretsch's latest diplomatic message to the Centauri delegation was translated as, "My grandmother smells like fermented engine coolant, and I challenge your leader to a dance-off." A wet splashing sound announced Glixnorp's arrival as he slithered into the operations center, leaving his customary slime trail. "The shipping networks are experiencing complications," he panted. "Apparently, the bipedal mammals managed 73% of our interstellar logistics." 73%? Vex's eye stalks recoiled in shock. "That's impossible. We barely noticed their involvement. The cargo manifest system just routed 40,000 tons of Rigelian seafood to the desert planet Zirion," Glixnorp reported miserably, "and 300,000 meditation crystals to the warrior planet Krugthak." 12 hours in, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The universal translator had completely malfunctioned, leaving the emergency council session conducted entirely in a mixture of interpretive dance and frustrated clicking sounds. Ambassador Kretsch had molted himself nearly bald, trying to communicate through feather arrangements. "This is a minor setback," Zephyrian insisted, though his mandibles clicked with increasing anxiety. "Surely we can manage without those water-obsessed carbon units." His words were interrupted by a low rumbling sound as the coffee machines throughout the station simultaneously died with mechanical gasps. The effect was immediate and devastating. Within minutes, the caffeine-dependent species began showing withdrawal symptoms. The Torellians became sluggish, their tentacles drooping pathetically. The Korthak delegation became increasingly agitated, molting at an alarming rate. "The humans maintained the coffee systems," whispered junior technician, a gecko-like saurian whose tail was twitching uncontrollably. "They handled all the minor maintenance requests." The emergency lighting flickered and died, plunging the operations center into darkness. Dignified ambassadors stumbled around, bumping into each other with wet slaps, crystalline chimes, and muffled curses in 17 different languages that nobody could understand anymore. "Perhaps," Glixnorp's voice echoed from somewhere in the darkness, "we should contact the humans and ask them to reconsider?" "Absolutely not." Zephyrian's voice cracked with indignation. "The Galactic Federation does not beg." A crash echoed through the darkness as someone walked into a wall, followed by a string of what sounded like very clear profanity in ancient Vulcarian. "Maybe we could ask them nicely," suggested a small voice from the back. 36 hours into the crisis, the Grand Council had formed 17 emergency committees, with a committee for coffee machine restoration designated as Priority Alpha. Ambassador Kretsch, now completely bald from stress molting, stood before the dismantled remains of what had once been the diplomatic lounge's premium brewing unit. "How difficult can it be?" he muttered, pecking at the internal components with his beak. "It's just heated water and ground beans." The first explosion sent him flying backward in a shower of sparks and coffee grounds. The second explosion somehow made the adjacent unit sentient, and it began screaming insults about his ancestry in mechanical beeps. The third explosion created what the Galactic Engineering Corps would later classify as a minor temporal anomaly that smells like burnt feathers. Meanwhile, the prestigious Galactic Engineering Corps attempted to restart the trading algorithms. Chief Engineer Blorjex, a proud member of the silicon-based crystalline hegemony, approached the task with absolute confidence in his species' mathematical superiority. "Observe," he announced to his assembled team, "how true intelligence solves problems that lesser species cannot comprehend." His fingers danced across the quantum interface with practiced precision. Numbers flowed, calculations cascaded, and for a brief moment, it seemed the system might actually respond. Then the display showed 40 billion tons of space lettuce being automatically ordered for immediate delivery to the black hole designated XK 739. "That's not entirely what we intended," Blorjex admitted, watching their entire agricultural budget disappear into a gravitational singularity. The military decided to tackle the communication arrays personally. "Admiral Vex," despite his advanced age, insisted his tactical experience made him uniquely qualified to handle simple maintenance issues. His confidence lasted exactly 14 minutes. The first modification attempt broadcast his personal diary across 47 star systems. The second somehow connected the emergency broadcast system to his private quarters entertainment center. By the time his subordinates managed to shut down the array, 17 civilizations had been treated to Admiral Vex's surprisingly tender love poetry dedicated to his pet space slug, Whiskers. My luminous gastropod of desire echoed across the Andromeda sector. Your slime trail leads to my heart's deepest chambers. 48 hours in, the situation had devolved into complete chaos. The universal translators, after repeated improvements by the engineering corps, now converted all speech into ancient Vulcarian poetry. Diplomatic negotiations were conducted entirely in haiku format, with Ambassador Glixnorp's attempts at trade agreements coming out as surprisingly profound observations about the nature of existence. Cargo ships drift lost/credits flow, like morning due/where the humans go. The food replicators, no longer calibrated by human technicians, began producing what could only be described as aggressively sentient pudding. The purple, gelatinous substances would bounce around the dining halls, apparently seeking social interaction and offering unsolicited advice about personal relationships. 60 hours into the crisis, the waste management systems reached critical failure. The smell had become so overwhelming that even the Nephrites, who technically had no olfactory organs, began complaining about unfortunate atmospheric disturbances. Perhaps, wheezed Glixnorp through his emergency breathing apparatus, we might consider diplomatic outreach to the departing humans. The Federation does not grovel, Zephyrian declared, though his voice was muffled by the waste processing mask covering his mandibles. 66 hours in, the lights went out permanently. 71 hours into the catastrophe, a single human shuttle docked with the crippled station. Captain Sarachin stepped through the airlock carrying a battered toolbox and wearing a t-shirt that read, "I tried to warn you," in 17 different languages, including ancient Vulcarian. The first thing she did was smack the main lighting control panel with a wrench. The emergency lighting flickered to life, illuminating the assembled alien dignitaries who had gathered around her like pilgrims witnessing a miracle. Ambassador Kretsch, still completely bald, actually bowed. "Magic," whispered Resonance of Truth, her crystalline form pulsing with awe. "Percussive maintenance," Sarah corrected, tucking the wrench back into her belt. "Works about 60% of the time, every time." She walked through the station with casual efficiency, fixing decades of accumulated problems while the entire Galactic Council followed behind her like lost ducklings. At the coffee machines, she adjusted a single dial. Water temperature was 0.3 degrees too hot, she explained to the slack-jawed aliens. Basic thermodynamics. The machines hummed to life, producing the first decent coffee the station had seen in 3 days. Ambassador Florbex actually wept, his chromatophores cycling through grateful colors. At the communication array, Sarah stared at the tangled modifications the engineering corps had made, then slowly shook her head. "Seriously? Did you try turning it off and on again?" She flipped the switch, waited 10 seconds, then flipped it back. The universal translators immediately began functioning normally. "Someone tried to improve the phony matrices," she muttered, pulling out a handheld scanner. "Why would you mess with a working system?" The scanner displayed a holographic list that filled the entire corridor, scrolling endlessly upward. 217 critical system failures prevented daily, she announced. "We kept logs. Detailed ones." Glixnorp's eye stalks drooped with shame. "You mean the humans were preventing all of this constantly?" "Every single day for 50 years, Sarah confirmed, casually rerouting power around a blown junction that had been sparking dangerously. "We submitted 47,000 improvement proposals. You rejected them all as unnecessarily complex." She finished the emergency repairs within 2 hours, systems functioning normally for the first time since the humans had announced their departure. The coffee was hot, the lights were bright, and the sentient pudding had been convinced to return to its dormant state. Sarah turned to face the stunned council. "So, We've been talking among ourselves during your little experiment in independence." Zephyrian's mandibles clicked nervously. "Talking about what?" "We're willing to return," she said with a slight smirk, "under revised terms. Equal partnership, not junior membership. Our suggestions get serious consideration, and we want better coffee in the diplomatic lounge." The council agreed so quickly they interrupted each other, a chorus of "yes" in multiple languages and harmonic frequencies. Sarah's smirk widened. "Oh, and full disclosure, we never actually left. We just withdrew our maintenance services to see how long it would take you to notice what we actually do around here." She raised her coffee mug in a mock toast to learning the hard way. The aliens cheered, finally understanding exactly who had been keeping their civilization running all along.